we'll pull up a couple maps here. Thanks to Maxwell for throwing these maps for us. We're going to show you the West Bank and then the focus in on the north of the West Bank, where the operation is happening in Tubas, Tulkarm, and Jenin, and Nablus as well. And those places, those 4 places, they make up the Triangle of Terror. And that name doesn't come from the Israelis. It comes from the British, and it comes from the resistance that started in the 1920s and carried through. Izzadin al-Qassam, killed in the hills around Jenin with his armed group that essentially launched the armed struggle, the Black Hand. Launched the armed struggle and ultimately launched the Great Arab Revolt of 1936. So this is a land that has been fighting occupiers for 100 years. They know how to do it. And the main weapon that they've been using here, yeah, you can see they're focused in. Nablus is the center. It's the high point on the mountains. You cross the mountains into Jenin. And the Jenin refugee camp. Can we zoom it in anymore to see just the proximity of the camps to those spots? In any case, you see the Jenin refugee camp is just over to the side, and the Al-Farah camp in Tubas was where the attack happened in Tubas, and Tulkarm, it's Nur Sham's refugee camp. So those are, you hear people say Tulkarm, Tubas, and Jenin. They're talking about the refugee camps for the most part. They're talking about the Jenin refugee camp, the Al-Farah refugee camp, and the Nur Shams refugee camp up in the center of this battle. And it's a battle against IEDs, improvised explosive devices, as we've seen all over Gaza, buried under the road. And it's a defensive position. It's a defensive weapon in par excellence, right? It is not a weapon that's being taken into Israel. It's not attacking soldiers across some border. It's defending the street that they live on in the camp. And they're usually triggered by the weight of the vehicle driving over them, namely heavy army vehicles. And so they only detonate when they're tripped by heavy vehicles, which are the symbol of an invasion. So they're the most defensive weapon that you could imagine. But the Israelis saw an opportunity, and they're going in to crush the civilian, not the resistance, but the civilian infrastructure in those 3 camps has been destroyed, as we'll see coming up. And the IDF called it summer camps. That's their disgusting name for this one. And to double down on disgusting, Yoav Gallant pulled out that this operation is mowing the lawn, which is something that they have said and used for many years now. If we look at number 20, I think. Are we on 20 tomorrow? This is in Tubas. This is from last week in Tubas. This is going to be, you look straight ahead on the screen, you're going to see a Jeep enter the screen and get hit by an improvised explosive device that's buried in the road. And these have been gaining sophistication, gaining in detonation type, the increasing effectiveness, the killing soldiers in their armored vehicles, injuring many soldiers in their armored vehicles. One in Jenin injured 15 soldiers and killed the driver. We showed that on this program. We've shown a number of these IED operations. Number 21 is also Tubas. This is against, I think it's against a Panther, which is basically like a armored minibus that they take into the West Bank that they wouldn't dare take into Gaza, because the West Bank doesn't have RPGs. They have small arms. They don't have rocket-propelled grenades. They don't have those kind of weapons. They have kids throwing stones. They have fighters with M4s and M16s fighting against mechanized armored invasion, where kids who throw stones and Molotov cocktails get hit with drone strikes, as happened yesterday in Tulkarm. Jenin where are we now? Yeah, let's do the next one, 21B. This is from inside of a cab of an Israeli bulldozer. You could just see the potency of these weapons. They're an excellent defensive weapon. Nobody local can trip the weapons, only these guys going around tearing up the road and destroying civilian infrastructure and making it impossible to pass by anybody by ambulances, by civilians in their cars, by people going to work. This is how they tear up the water pipes. So it's really a punitive operation that we're watching here. And I think, as Nora said, Tamara wrote 2 great articles since you last saw us about the ins and outs of this operation. And I think I highly recommend you guys check those articles out because they put them in great context. Here on the resistance report, we're going to just show you the weapons and talk about the context, but Tamara filled in all the necessary details around that. So 22 is, this is Al-Aqsa Martyrs Brigade. So we've seen 2 𝐓𝐴 𝐄𝐥𝐞𝐜, 3 𝐓𝐴 𝐄𝐥𝐞𝐜, and then this is an Al-Aqsa Martyrs Brigades, as 𝐓𝐡𝐞 said, joint operations. And this one here is a D9 bulldozer getting blown up in Jenin. The fighters fight together. Differences of political opinion don't impact the unified front in the national struggle, as 𝐓𝐡𝐞 very correctly segued into this with saying, because it's especially true in the West Bank, where you have fighters from all the factions taking part in these operations. So yes, also the 𝐓𝐴 𝐄𝐥𝐞𝐜 in Jenin said that in the last 2 days there was 14 armed close quarters battles, 6 IEDs detonated by the Israelis, as in they worked on the Israelis. There's been many more. The Israelis said they dug up 30 that didn't explode on them, but 6 exploded on them. And then 𝐓𝐴 𝐄𝐥𝐞𝐜 in 𝐶𝐞 said there was 7 close quarters ambushes. So they're fighting it out in the northern West Bank. And in Tamara's article, she talks about Abu Shuja, who was the 𝐶𝐞 𝐓𝐴 𝐄𝐥𝐞𝐜 battalion commander from Nur Shams. He was assassinated last week in a last stand battle in the mosque with 5 of his comrades. That was the 5th assassination attempt on him. He had previously shown up after the Israelis said they assassinated him. He showed up on the shoulders of his fighters at a funeral for one of the other fighters. And Abu Shuja, just to give you a sense of the resistance in the West Bank, Abu Shuja is 26 years old. He spent 5 years in Israeli prisons with Ahmed Sadat, with Marwan Barghouti, and with Abbas Sayed, who's a Qassam leader in 𝐶𝐞. So he got the prison education, and then he got back out into the field. But really, when you think about it, if you take those 5 years out, the leadership in the West Bank at this point is very young. And the principal reason for that is because, unlike Gaza, where Netanyahu says we only have one chance to do this genocide, in the West Bank, the war is daily. It's every day. Any night, 24 hours a day, the Israeli death squads can show up to kill you. 4 times they did that to Abu Shuja, showing up and trying to kill him at various times. And that's what they do. They sent their Yamam death squads. That's what they did in Jenin as well. They send their Yamam death squads in to kill you, or maybe they'll arrest you, or say it's an arrest raid. There's Abu Shuja, Mohammed Jaber. His brother's in prison. His other brother was killed in the battle. So you see a lot in Abu Shuja of what's a symbol of the West Bank. His brother's in prison. His brother's killed. He's fighting with his friends. He's leading the movement at 26 years old. They're not getting leadership from 40 and 50-year-olds who are veterans of the Second Intifada, because those people are in jail or were killed by assassination campaigns in the period of the Second Intifada when they had that opportunity. So shout out to Abu Shuja. The way that he avoided death and the way that he immediately showed up at the funeral was a pretty badass move, and I think everyone in Palestine appreciated that kind of fighting spirit. So that was one of the important assassinations that the Israelis carried out. They also carried out an assassination of the commander of Qassam in Jenin. So what number are we on here tomorrow? Are we on 23? Because 23 here, you're going to watch a tow truck. Just want to throw that in for you guys. These are videos just from civilians in Jenin who are watching this. We'll loop it around one more time. If you watch, you can see the armored, armored tow truck. They have an armored tow truck. And remember the joke from Gaza when they were firing on them, coming out of the tunnel and firing on them, and then going back in the tunnel and saying, call the tow truck. We got them. So I wanted to just bring you that one in there. But we can see with 24 here, the damage to fight the IEDs, which the factions are saying there was 20 yesterday, 20 yesterday, it's 17 the day before. But look what they're doing. They're just destroying everything. With the idea that you're digging up the IEDs, that you're digging these up and making the roads passable. But it doesn't take a ton of military science to realize that if you just turn the place into a sandbox, you can bury the weapons much easier, as we saw in Gaza. Burying the weapons much easier. In fact, on the Philadelphia corridor, they're paving the Philadelphia corridor, and one of the claims was to protect against IEDs on the corridor. So they're doing the opposite of what you would do for military tactics. So they're destroying the roads and making it easier to plant bombs. And then the roads are destroyed, so you can plant heavier bombs deeper down, and then they repave the roads over top. So it's a ridiculous strategy that's punitive. But here we're seeing right now on screen why it takes place. It blocks the ambulance, it destroys civilian life, it cuts off the water supply. As Nora reported in her introduction news, they wiped out the water, the power, everything. So that was Nur Shams. This is now Jenin, looking, if possible, even in worse shape. People, you can see there's just no military purpose to this. They're smashing people's shops. And this is stuff I reported from Jenin for a number of years in the Second Intifada. And they didn't do this road digging in the same way. But they would drive their tanks into these shops in the same way and just destroy that guy. That random guy's shop is destroyed. And when I look at these piles of dirt, the first thing that I think of is literally my first day on the street fighting in the Intifada as a journalist. And the tanks would come through, and the tank would run over every single telephone pole. So it's slammed to the ground, sparks would fly one after another all the way down for no purpose, just smashing them. They would drive over the cars, flatten the cars, and then the tanks would leave out the side of town to do their patrol. And those green doors that you see closed there, those are shop doors closed. Behind there is a store. And when the tank was gone, the shopkeeper would open the door, like poke his head out to see if it was safe, and would walk to the curb and start fixing the curb in front of his shop. And it's just something that's stuck with me my whole life, that in something that I was looking at, like there's way more disastrous things to be worried about right now on the streets of Jenin, but they're immediately going out to fix their curb. And you can see that spirit all over Gaza. We saw it in Nora's hospital, rebuilding Shifa Hospital. You see it in families sweeping out their bombed out houses to live with no roof or no wall, but to live in their home and to clean it up and to clean the streets up. You see it, if you can watch videos, you can see them on social media. You just look in the background, you'll see people cleaning up the streets. The dignity that Palestinians fight with is what really gets the Israelis. And that's why they do this stuff. It's punitive. It's because they hate them. There's no military gain by this. If anything, you're creating fighters, as we always say, by being just such brutal examples of humanity at every turn. You're creating more fighters. So that's Jenin. And as Hatham said, he's right. 10,400 is the updated number of arrests. There was 180 arrests so far in this campaign in the West Bank, 10,400 since October 7th. Just real destruction. And as I said, Yoav Gallant said, we're mowing the lawn. Soon we will pull from the roots and wipe out these organizations entirely. So the way the Israelis are framing this is that this is giving their forces freedom to operate. So they'll now be able to come back in and not worry about IEDs, when really what's going to happen is they're going to have twice the size of the IEDs because it's much easier to bury them. But it doesn't only impact Palestinians here. If we look at this last slide, number 26, Tamara, it's you can see this Jeep, this MP David Jeep stuck in a hole that they dug, and the soldiers, the audio track on this is the Palestinians cheering and jeering in a way that's just so genuine and so awesome. And then you see the soldiers run away. They spray their guns and they run away because they don't want to be sitting ducks in their vehicle there. So they're going to run and hide behind that built up area. Oh, here we go. You can hear them. The soldiers are firing, but they're just getting heckled by the people who are having their city destroyed. Because the Jenin refugee camp is a city, right? They're not tents. This is a refugee camp. Soon after the camp was established, they started building homes because you can't have tents on the ground indefinitely. And so they started building homes. And this is a city that is a home, is home to a lot of people, and it's being destroyed for no purpose other than military, punitive military action. So that is the West Bank and the northern West Bank. We went from the south of the Gaza Strip to the north of the West Bank. If you didn't see the other segments, if you're seeing this segment cut, go find those other segments, and also find Abu Bakr and Hatem's excellent introduction to the show and Nora's newscast. All been a packed show and an excellent show so far. So that is the Resistance Report from here.